And I prayed that God would strengthen my faith to take me deeper than ever before. And before this time, I really struggled with prayer. Really struggled with prayer. As the pastor said, I love worship, I love leading worship, I love leading God's people into worship, but I struggled with prayer. I knew it was important, but to take the time to pray sometimes, it was a quick prayer. It was like, God, help me. God, do this, God, do that. But to sit down and actually dwell in God's presence, that was hard. And I've been saved for many years, but this is one of the things I found really hard. But during this time, I asked God, one of these moments, I wonder if you've ever had a moment where you've really asked God to deepen you, really to strengthen you, and take you deeper than you've ever been before. And I prayed just before we got engaged. I said, God, I want to know what prayer really means. I want to know what it's like to pray that help prayer like I really mean it. Like I've got no other options in my life, but I've only got you. But God brought me to my knees in the space of 2 years. As I said, I just got engaged. I was in a relatively secure job. All of a sudden, the pandemic happened. And I'm sure we all experienced things in the pandemic. During that pandemic, I was made redundant twice. We were planning for a wedding. We were given an offer of a house that wasn't really what we wanted. It wasn't geographically where we wanted. It wasn't the house that we liked. And it was relatively more than what we wanted to spend. But we were about to sign. And I remember we were praying about it, and I started to lose faith in it. I said, if God's going to move, Joanna, he would have done it by now. I'm sure maybe one of you have said something that's very similar. And Joanna said to me, she said, we're going to wait 3 days. She said, God's told me we have to wait 3 days, and he's going to answer our prayer. I couldn't believe it. I doubted God. It really knocked me down. I said, no. I said, if God's going to show up, God's going to show up 6 months before, not 4 months before our wedding. She said, wait 3 days. That same day, I had multiple calls on my phone, probably from different houses, different bids, whatever it was, and I wasn't interested because God wasn't going to show up. God wasn't going to do anything. But on the third day, we had a call. And the house of our dreams came on the market. And we were told that it had been sitting waiting for us for 3 days. We were told that it had been passed through the hands of 15 to 20 people, and each one of them had said no for whatever reason. And they came back to us. And they said, we'd been trying you for 3 days, but you wouldn't pick up the phone. It was probably my number. God taught me something very simple in that. When God has a plan for your life, nothing will change it. And sometimes there's times in our lives where we have to stand still and wait for God. Instead of trying to plan things out, instead of trying to do our own ways about things, we have to wait for God.